Slow down, lay your burden down.
Hey, it's Dan. Welcome to Divergent Paths with Dan Dunford. That's me. Episode 9. Here we go. This is a special one for me. I was really excited about getting to do this. This is a big Chelsea Symphony episode. The Chelsea Symphony is an orchestra that I play with here in the city. Really good organization, great group of people. People I count as my friends. I love playing with them, and so I was really happy that Mark Seto, who is one of the co-artistic directors of the orchestra, and Emily Wong, who is the president of the orchestra, they sat down with me and we talked about the orchestra, about how they got involved and what makes the Chelsea Symphony a unique group, so we talk about music programming. It's Monday, so today is the first rehearsal for our next concert, which will be this upcoming Friday and Saturday rather. A pair of concerts at the Dimena Center on West 37th. So if you're in the area, definitely come out. I'm doing a lot of great music with them. A new piece by the composer in residence Aaron Dye, a piece by Gerard Schwartz giving the New York premiere, and then some Artie Shaw and some George Gershwin, 2 concertos to round out the concert. So excuse me, I talked to Emily and Mark on the first part, and then there is also a little special tag on this episode. Like I said, we're doing some Artie Shaw, the Artie Shaw Clarinet Concerto, which is a real fun piece, and the lovely and wonderful clarinetist who will be performing it this weekend, Angela Shankar. She was kind enough to sit down with me for a few minutes and talk about the piece and about her involvement with the Chelsea Symphony and a few other things. First, it'll be my talk with Mark and Emily, which I did about a month ago, and then at the end will be about 10 minutes of me talking to Angela. So stick around for the whole thing. Worth your time. Music in this episode is recording of, or part of the orchestra's performance of the first movement of Mendelssohn Symphony No. 4. We performed that last season, and Matt Aubin, who is the other co-artistic director of the orchestra, was kind enough to let me use one of those recordings. And so be a couple clips of that. So listen and enjoy. Come to the concert this weekend. The concerts this weekend, Friday night, Saturday night, both at 8 o'clock, both at the Dimena Center. And I'll be playing on both of those concerts, so come say hello if you are around. And as per usual, if you like the podcast, please comment, subscribe, share, email me at divergentpathspod@gmail.com. I'd love to talk to people more about my podcast if I haven't worn everyone out by talking about it already. Chelsea Symphony super episode right now. Thanks, guys.
Slow down.
the first time I've recorded with more than one person at a time. That's exciting for me. I don't know what's going to happen. Things might just explode, so be ready for that. Also, I won't pay for the damage. I just don't have that money. So, thanks for coming in, or meeting me here. It's nice. So, for people listening, I have two people. They're both from the Chelsea Symphony. It's awesome. I play with them. They let me play with them, more to the point.
We're happy to have you play with us.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice to hear. That was Mark. He is co-artistic director of the Chelsea Symphony, and also here is Emily, who is the president and head ass kicker.
Can I make a business card that says that?
I would be so happy if you did that. You could have your act. You could have 3 different business cards actually. You could have your day job business card, which of course the company provides, I would assume.
Yes.
You could have your Chelsea Symphony president card / horn player, whatever, and then just one.
Which she has already. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which I do.
Exactly. And then you can have one that just is like professional ass kicker or something like that.
I'm gonna get right on that.
Yeah, you really should. I mean, with that many different business cards, they should give you a discount on something.
I know, right? Volume
Right.
discount.
First, Chelsea Symphony is orchestra here in the city, obviously in Chelsea, and this is 10th anniversary season. Now, both of you have not been involved for all 10 years.
Neither of us.
Right. I got involved at the very end of the first year.
Mm-hmm.
And I played as a violinist that concert. Yaniv Siegel, who was one of the co-artistic directors, we had been friends from various conducting programs, and he asked me to play that series, and then I joined the following year as one of the conductors. And this is now my 5th season as one of the artistic directors.
So there's kind of a packet, you have a musician, just conductor, and then straight up to the top. I get it.
No, the things just happened to work out nicely that way. But.
And Emily, how did you start getting involved?
Well, I moved to the city after grad school, and I took some time off from playing, actually.
And where was that?
At Indiana University. And I was doing my doctorate, and I thought I was going to write my paper and finish everything out, so I took a little time off, and then I realized that all of that felt like it was for nothing, and unless I was actually playing. So I got back into playing, and a horn player that I met in the city actually recommended the Chelsea Symphony to me, and she said they're a really great group, and everyone who's there really wants to be there. So I contacted the then president, Julia Koo, and that's how I got involved.
So one thing, I mean, I've only been playing with the group for about a year and a half, and very similar kind of thing. Well, Matt Aubin, who's the other co-artistic director, got asked someone in the violin section, do you know any trombone players? And she gave him 3 email addresses for people who went to Manus, and he emailed all 3 of us at the same time, and I just happened to be able to get the email and respond within 2 minutes. So I that was very, I always try to respond to emails like that as quickly as possible, otherwise someone else will do it. But my first concert was the season opener last season.
Okay.
What was on it? I don't remember.
Midsummer Night's Dream Overture, which I guess you went to play in.
Right. There's a barely...
Much Ado About Nothing. And... Right, Beatrice and Benedict Overture, the Berlioz.
And it was strange for me because I am predominantly bass trombonist, and Matt was calling for a tenor trombonist. I hadn't played tenor trombone since 2006, So I went and found a friend who had one that he wasn't using, and I now basically have it on permanent loan, and I started playing principal on this concert, which after not having touched a tenor trombone in 8 years, and which was really great because after that, this past year, probably about 75% of my gigs have been on tenor, and because I had to do it that one time, all of a sudden I was just doing it all the time, and it worked. It was a good way for me to ease back into that. But that's not really the point of this whole thing. Let's talk about me. I brought you guys in here. Let's talk about me. Now, so violinist Mark, horn player Emily. What is it about this sort of thing? Like, were you always, when you were coming up as a musician, was this always the kind of direction that you were wanting to go into, or is this just something that happened to be, this is something that I have an opportunity to do, I guess I'll take it. You conduct now. Were you always planning on being a conductor, or were you just always, thinking violin only?
Well, so I grew up in a household that had a lot of music. My older brother played the violin, and when I came along, it was just, that was the thing that everybody did in this house, right? So I started playing violin as well, and piano, and some other instruments later on. And it was what I loved to do, but I think I always had the sense that I didn't want to be a violinist. There were just certain aspects of the practicing that weren't really my thing. Practicing intonation, those sorts of things, right? And I knew that I didn't have the temperament to be able to have the sort of life as a violinist, or that I just realized that wouldn't be my thing. So actually, when I went to college, I knew that I wanted to go to a place where I could study music but have other options.
And where was that?
This was at Yale.
Okay.
So I dabbled in a lot of different things there, but in the end I did end up majoring in music, but that degree was essentially a liberal arts degree, so music history, music theory, and such. And actually I shouldn't say for that matter that in terms of what I do now, aside from my work with the Chelsea Symphony, I'm also a professor at Connecticut College.
Mm-hmm.
And so aside from wearing two hats in that sense, in my quote-unquote professional life, I'm also a musicologist. So after college, and during college, I was starting to conduct. And one of the appeals of that for me was that as a conductor, you get to really kind of look at the conceptual aspects, and you get to do all, to me, the really sort of intellectually and musically engaging things without having to practice your intonation, right? If somebody plays out of tune, it's not my fault, right?
It's my fault.
Right. Right, so through college and then in through grad school, I was concurrently doing the musicology thing, but also I was fortunate to have opportunities to conduct. So in the position where I am now at Connecticut College, that's it's basically half and half. So I direct the orchestra there, but I also teach academic courses in music history and other academic music topics. So
yeah, I mean, it's a lot of, even if conductors don't do what you do and have a musicology aspect, there's a fair amount of conducting that you have to do that anyway. Otherwise, you have to be able to communicate to the orchestra,
mm-hmm.
What is the composer doing? Why is he doing it?
Right.
It helps, and so it seems to me that having an even stronger background where this is something that you
mm-hmm.
actually teach would make it, in a way, easier to fulfill your responsibilities as a good music director.
Sure, or I think there's an inherently quote-unquote musicological component to any good performance, just understanding how what we do as musicians is embedded in cultural contexts and cultural practices, and just knowing how that works, I think, is sort of a fundamental thing that you need to be giving an informed performance no matter what you do, if you're a conductor or an instrumentalist or a singer or what have you.
I find that with younger musicians, even though, myself included, but a lot of times there is a tendency to skip over that kind of learning about what you're doing in favor of just learning the notes and trying to make good phrases, which is all important. I was in a studio class a few years ago where one of the trombone players was performing the Brahms 4 Series songs, and he sounded good. Of course, he's a very good trombone player and a really cool guy and all that stuff. But when the person running the class started working with him on some deeper stuff, it came up that he didn't know the words to these 4 songs, even though he had been working on them for months and months at a time. And 4 Series songs is something that's performed very regularly, especially by trombone players. And the idea that someone wouldn't know that aspect of what they were performing, I found it a little bit staggering, because I considered this guy a very good musician, and he is. Mm-hmm. But that he didn't take the time to learn that, it was a little bit confusing to me, because that's a lot of times the first thing I look at before I even start working on a piece. I'll pick something based on what's behind it, as opposed to just being like, oh, this is nice. Moving from that into more Chelsea related things, if you will, do both of you have work on the programming of each concert? Or
really, Mark and Matt are the ones who deal with all of the programming. So
we should emphasize, I suppose, that the structure of how the Chelsea Symphony works is not.
It's not your typical standard. So yeah, let's hold on that and move into exactly. Chelsea Symphony is a little bit of unique situation. You don't have it's not the same people every time. There's kind of a core group that does it frequently.
Right.
But there's always new people coming in, sometimes only for a concert or two, or the series rather. But overall, it's still a full orchestra every time, but it's just not always the same people. Now, what is obviously part of that is because people are busy. And
right.
You have to. Not everyone can commit to do a week of rehearsals for a concert for no money, but you guys offset the lack of money in some interesting ways, which I think are very interesting. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
Oh, sure.
Get it on this, Emily.
Well, the Chelsea Symphony is, I think, we're in an interesting middle ground, in my opinion, between the sort of volunteer orchestra model and what I consider to be a semi-professional or professional level orchestra, because the quality of the performances are, in my opinion, which is biased, very good. And it's I think it's a uniquely positioned group, but it doesn't, in regular series, don't compensate the musicians monetarily, mm-hmm. which is something that we're always mindful of. But we do have other opportunities that we're able to offer to our core membership and other people who are affiliated with the orchestra, in terms of paying gigs, and now we're involved in the Amazon original series Mozart in the Jungle.
I think that's come up, out of the 8 episodes I've recorded, I think that's come up, Mozart in the Jungle's come up probably 5 of the 8 times, because there's been funny things that have happened that I've kind of interacted with people about. But if people have been listening to this, they've heard about Mozart in the Jungle a lot.
Well, it's kind of
it's awesome.
It's kind of a relevant thing right now, and the Chelsea Symphony was able to partner with the music coordinator for this show, mm-hmm. and provide a large number of musicians for the New York Symphony,
the fictional New York Symphony,
will, yes.
Yeah. It's roughly,
just from my own times of being on set, it seems like it's about 60% ish of,
I'm not
depending on
sure,
the day.
Yeah,
like the ones that filmed here in New York, it was a higher quotient of those Chelsea musicians.
Yeah.
The ones that SUNY purchased was a little more even.
I know they also utilize the new Westchester Symphony.
Yeah. One thing I found very interesting about the orchestra in particular is that I mentioned this to you before, but I was Trevor New, who is a violist and one of the main violists who plays with the orchestra, regularly, and I just straight up asked him when we were talking, because Chelsea was one of the first things he did when he moved here in 2010. He, like, within a couple weeks, he was playing on the first concert, and then for whatever reason, the principal violist couldn't do the show, and he ended up stepping into that role on his very first time after being in New York for 2 weeks. But I asked him, like, okay, this is 5 years later, why are you still doing it? But his response was that, well, I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, if you have time, if you have the time, if you don't have the conflicts, good people, music's good. There's, the programming is good, and a lot of other things have come from it. And even from personal experience, in my short time, I've met a lot of really great people who I've then collaborated with on other things, and you run into them on other gigs, and you're like, oh hey, and you start to foster these friendships and relationships that are beneficial artistically for everyone. So it's pretty. Chelsea's not the only orchestra I play with, but it's probably the only one that I play with where the people keep wanting to come back. Which is nice. Not the only one, but people keep coming back for years and years and years, even if it's only for one series a season.
So, well, your typical orchestra is a very hierarchical organism. You have your music director, you might have your executive director, and it's very top-down. And when the Chelsea Symphony was founded, and I can't take credit for this because I wasn't involved back then, so have to give credit to our founders, two conductors, Yaniv Siegel and Miguel Campos Neto. Their idea was to rethink that whole model of how you organize a symphony. And instead of having that top-down model, the idea with Chelsea is that everybody can wear multiple hats, and that leadership is a shared ideal. So, for instance, Matt and I are the two artistic directors, but there are other musicians who conduct the group. Mm-hmm. And when we're not conducting, we all play in the orchestra. So for this, we're in the middle of a concert series this week, and our colleague Ruben is conducting the first half, and I'm playing violin. And then we're trading off, and I'm conducting the second half, and he's playing violin. Likewise, we have Chelsea Symphony composers, and they all play orchestral instruments, so they get a performance of a piece of theirs each season, and in exchange they play in the orchestra. And then our musicians have the opportunity, once they play with us enough, that they can perform a solo with the orchestra. So on this concert weekend, we have 3 soloists, all of whom have been involved in the Chelsea Symphony for some time now. And it's a really nice model where people feel like they have a stake in it because they get these opportunities. And I think it provides a valuable service to a certain segment of musicians in New York, where to get these professional development opportunities, to get a piece played of your composer, or to be able to solo with an orchestra, or for a conductor who's in the early stages of their career to get an opportunity to work with a group of this caliber. I mean, these are really great opportunities. And I think one of the things that I'm really proud about with this orchestra is the fact that so many people from so many different pathways in terms of what they've done in music in New York have been involved with the group, and many of them have gone on to really incredible things.
I just think in addition to all of that, aside from the artistic aspect, I play horn with the group, and I started playing horn. I didn't get involved operationally until about 2 or 3 years into it, and then I joined the board, and now I'm the president. And the other part of it is that people have the opportunity to be involved from an administrative side as well. So, we all wear all the hats.
Right.
And so if this goes back to what Mark was talking about with the musicological, I'm sorry, that's a hard word, musicological aspect of conducting, but we rely on him heavily for a lot of the text that we have to generate for each concert, whether it's a communication or something for the website. So we draw heavily on Mark's expertise for that. So thank you, as always.
But even outside of that, just like the designs for the actual graphic design is Alice Bacon, who also plays with the orchestra when she has she's not on this series, but she plays with the orchestra, and all these parts come from within the group. Yeah,
and actually our website is in the process of being redesigned by Nick, one of our bass players, Nick Bodencontry, and he's doing a fantastic job with Alice on that. So we're looking to go live with that in October, and it's worth the wait, in my opinion. So
now, one question because there's not a hierarchical setup within the orchestra, each of you play and also have leadership positions. Have you ever run into an issue where that kind of familiarity but created challenges with leading the organization? Because sometimes, I was in the Navy for a while, and there are rules about leadership, fraternizing with the, I don't want to say the common folk, but the enlisted personnel, if you will. And in an orchestra setting, a lot of time, the president and the music director, those are the officers, and then you have the enlisted who are the musicians. Now, from what I've seen, there doesn't seem to be that tension. But I was just curious if that's something that you have to deal with on occasion.
I think that's one of the great things about the way that we work, is that precisely because although we have leadership positions, we are also one of the orchestra much of the time. Well, to my mind, I think that informs the sort of rapport that you can have with the group. I mean, you can't be an autocrat when conducting the Chelsea Symphony, because then you need to go and sit in your section, and then and then you'll get it back at you. So
I guess in some ways it keeps you in line.
I suppose, right? But I think that's one of the reasons why musicians tend to like playing with us, because we don't have that.
It's
the boundary.
Yeah.
Right.
But I do think that because we try to be transparent about everything and communicate very clearly about what our policies are, what we expect of our musicians, and manage our own expectations about what we can reasonably expect from them, then any kind of awkward conversation we have to have has already been, a foundation has been laid. And so we're all people in the end, and there's the things that go along with being people in close proximity with other people. But I don't think we've had anything dramatic happen.
Well, that's
we haven't had to put down any rebellions yet.
Yeah, no coups yet.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a lot of several orchestras that I have played with over whatever period of time. That it'll be like, oh, we are having 5 rehearsals. You have to be at all of them. Also, we're not paying you. Also, I'm kind of an asshole. And it's difficult to muster up the desire to produce good music in that kind of circumstance. You know, not naming any names, it's just kind of a thing that happens across not just New York but in other places as well. It's hard to pay musicians, but you gotta work with them if you're not, if it's going to be a situation like that. And Chelsea does it in a way that is very welcoming and easy to work with.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Which is nice for me. I mean, so like I have no problem being like, okay, this week, put this in, okay, rehearsals in my calendar. It'll be fine. And especially a week like this week where I was really only there for 25 minutes of each rehearsal anyway.
For the record, we were playing Brahms 1, so that's it's not that Dan was slacking off or something.
Yeah, no, I was not slacking off. One thing that also that I've noticed over the past several seasons, even before I was actually involved in playing with the orchestra, is that the way I'm very interested in the actual programming of the concert series. It's done in a very interesting way where I have issues with orchestras in general. Like I like
as a bass trombonist, that may not work for you.
That's why I play. That's why I create my own things and play in as many groups as possible.
Touché.
But professional orchestras, the way they program things is problematic in my mind. I'm just a nobody, schlepping my way through New York. But I look at orchestra programs and they're just not interesting, and it's the same thing over and over. And while I understand that people are always going to want to hear Beethoven 7 or
That's exactly the one I thought of.
Yeah, I mean, even though I don't play on it, I do like Beethoven 7.
I love Beethoven 7.
Right, so but people are always going to want to hear it, but at the same time, it frequently is packaged in a way that's very, 1890s. I mean, even if there's something new on the program, it's like, let's throw this new piece at the beginning, and then we'll get into the real stuff. So it's a really long-winded way to say that I appreciate the more, some more inventive, because of the amount of concertos that are being performed every series, but also just the themes that run throughout the seasons. Last season was everything was Shakespeare related, not necessarily only Romeo and Juliet or that, but also West Side Story and Tchaikovsky's The Tempest, which is very rarely performed. So what kind of mindset do you have when you're creating these season-long arcs, and also talk a little bit about this next season, which I'm interested in, but I don't know exactly what the concept is because I've just seen the titles of each concert.
Sure.
But you're interested, right?
I'm interested,
right.
Definitely.
We've piqued your interest, and that's good. So, I guess just to speak generally before we get into this season, a lot of our programming actually comes organically from our musicians. What will happen is that towards the end of the spring, when we're looking ahead towards the next year and thinking about what to program, Matt and I will take a look at the list of our musicians who have played with the orchestra enough to get their benefit of doing a solo with the orchestra in the next year, and we'll send out a message saying, hey, you're up for a solo, do you want to do it? Send us your ideas. And a lot of things just come naturally out of that. They might propose 2 or 3 or 4, and we'll say, okay, well, maybe this option A might work better with this program or what have you. And in past seasons, what we've typically done is some sort of thematic programming. So last year we did a Shakespeare-themed season in honor of Shakespeare's 450th birthday. Other seasons have been exploring lesser-known American symphonies, and what else have we done recently?
My first year it was opera-themed.
Oh, right, music from opera and ballet.
Yeah.
So sometimes we'll give guiding parameters to both our soloists and also our composers in saying, okay, well, here is the thread through the season, and if you can find some way to work that in, great. Likewise, for all the conductors on staff, they get some latitude in saying, okay, well, here's some ideas for things that I like to program. And in a way that makes the job that Matt and I have easier than just trying to generate everything from scratch, because we have all this great input from our musicians. Concurrent with that, it's really exciting to see, especially in the last couple of seasons, so much interest in newer music, not only just the works that our composers do, but also our soloists will say, hey, I'd love to do this piece. It was just written a couple years ago. It's never been done in New York before, and let's do it. So
yeah, and last year, actually, there were 3 collaborations
right.
between soloists and Chelsea members, Yaniv and Eric, Sean Renee, who plays cello, and Nick, and who wrote Nick's
Ben
piece?
Brody.
Ben Brody, of course, Ben, who's a horn player as well. And then Eric Allen had a collaboration, not with a Chelsea member, but with a composer friend of his,
Max Graf.
Who's a fellow IU alum. And so that kind of energy, I think, also contributes to the overall interest of the season as well.
And last year you also introduced the composition.
Right, the composition competition.
Right.
That's difficult to say.
I call it the comp.
I like that better.
That's not official, but
You should trademark it now.
what is it, the little R?
Little
TM.
TM, yeah.
Comp, TM.
So that's another. That last season was the first one, right?
That's right. Do you want to talk about that? Or?
Sure.
And it is returning this season as well.
Yes. So we have been very lucky to have Gerard Schwartz, who's the conductor emeritus.
Laureate.
Thank you. Conductor laureate of the Seattle Symphony, and he's now involved in the All-Star Orchestra.
And also former principal trumpet.
Former principal trumpet.
Of the New York Philharmonic.
Can't forget that part. And he is, he was gracious enough to be our guest judge for our comp last year, and is returning this year in that capacity. So we thank him for that involvement.
And forgive me, how did you get a hold of him?
I think that was...
Matt had done some work with him.
Because Matt
Right.
was based
I think
in
it was actually
Washington
some
for a
sort
while.
of Eastern Music Festival connection.
Okay.
I'm not positive about it, but
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but Matt won him over with his charm,
Of course.
and he was gracious enough to agree to do this with us. And so we're actually playing one of his pieces called A Journey in October.
Right.
It's our sort of Americana-themed concert, and we really wanted to expand the new music that we do to people who may not play a traditional orchestral instrument, and also give opportunities to other composers in the New York City area. So it breathes a new life. It is something that's exciting for us. Our winning piece from last year was called Tightrope Walker by Michael Boyman, and it's a fantastic piece.
yeah.
I played it. It was cool. So the series this season, the arc this season. Now I've been looking at, reading the emails, of course, and looking at the program, and I'm seeing things like doors and windows and kitchen and walk-in closet, and no, that one's not in there. But what is the arc for this season?
So our overall arc has always been a 10th anniversary celebration.
Of course.
Right, and so when we were doing the programming and looking at each of the concerts to find a common thread, if we could, we've gotten to the habit of creating a title for each of our series,
Right.
which I personally like contextually, and makes it easier to write about and talk about and create content for.
It's not just our concert Symphony No. 2 by
Right.
whoever.
September,
Yeah.
October. Right.
Yay.
So actually, Alice Bacon, who's our graphic designer extraordinaire, also a cellist with the orchestra, she and I were meeting about the art one day at her place in Brooklyn, and she she came up with these titles herself. And I said, these are fantastic. And the artwork actually was originally something else entirely, and more conceptual, vivid colors, etc. And she said, I'm going to have a really hard time not wanting to redesign the artwork for this based on these new titles. And I said, well, we're kind of cutting it close, but I trust you. And I think that if you want to do it and you have time, then that would be awesome. And she constructed this whole thing out of thin air, it seems to me. And when I saw it for the first time, I think I literally gasped because I thought it was so beautiful. And so the concert titles are based on different parts of a home, architectural inspired house elements. And so the artwork is a house in New York City. And for myself personally, I contextualized it by calling it the house that Chelsea built. So for our 10th anniversary season, it's not, a formal thing that we came up with. It was just sort of an organic evolution. And I think that the end result is fantastic.
Well, I mean, a lot of times if you're sitting down and trying to think of something, you can run into an issue by trying to force a concept on something that might not be wanting to take it. But something like that where it just, well, hey, and again, coming out of the members of the symphony,
right? Yeah,
it seems like we keep coming back to that, but that's like the biggest draw. I mean, when it comes down to it, one of the biggest draws. So while we're talking about this home concept, the orchestra is actually moving away from the place that it's been its home for the past several years, not since the beginning, or just
not quite the beginning,
but very close.
But for most of the orchestra's life, it's been centered in the German Lutheran Church on West 22nd,
St. Paul's. Right.
St. Paul's, right? The rehearsals all happen there. The concerts happen there. We have our little informal before the concert meetings there, and have receptions afterwards, all in the same church. But this season, we're doing several concerts at the Domena Center.
That's right.
And so what was the push towards a more traditional concert hall setting?
Well, St. Paul's has been a very good home for us. They're always very welcoming, and it's a nice space for us because, well, it has wonderful acoustics. In terms of our membership, we have slightly smaller string sections than you would have in a typical full orchestra, but the acoustics work very nicely for us so that it sounds like a full string section. That said, as we were looking at our 10th anniversary and wanting to use this as an opportunity to start doing some new things as well, one of the comments that we actually got a lot from our membership was that they wanted to have the opportunity to explore some new venues. And we've had some occasion to do this in the past. A couple of years ago, we played at Symphony Space, and the season before that, we actually did a performance at Avery Fisher. But we thought, well, the Domena Center would be a great option because it's still close by. It's in Chelsea, and it allows us the flexibility to do certain things that we couldn't do at St. Paul's. For instance, for space reasons, there's only so many people that you can fit in the church. But at Domena, when we close the season in June, we'll be doing a Mahler symphony, which we just simply wouldn't have the space to do.
You can't stick 8 horns on that ledge.
Right, we'd have to put some of them up in the balcony or something.
Right.
Likewise, in the October series that's coming up, which is a special All-American program, we'll, in addition to doing this piece by Gerard Schwartz and a piece by one of our resident composer, Aaron Dye, and then we're doing clarinet concerto featuring one of our musicians, Angela Shankar. But we're also doing Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, and of course that's piano concerto. And in
Yeah, I guess I never
Yeah.
thought about the fact that you can't really push a piano in front of the orchestra. at
Right.
St.
There's
Paul's.
there's just not the space to
Yeah.
do that. So
it just have someone back in the corner.
Yeah.
right. So we're using the opportunity to be able to do things that we couldn't do in our home base, and we still consider St. Paul's our home base. But this is just
there are
building
still obviously this week's concert series was still at St. Paul's.
Sure.
There'll be several more throughout the season.
Of course.
You know, it's not you're not cutting ties or
in.
anything.
No, not at all.
In addition to the concerts and the new venue and all this stuff, there's also in November, I believe, is partnering with
The Musical Theater Factory.
Musical Theater Factory. All I could see was the email saying TCS times XTF. MTF. Wow, I'm just like all over it. MTF, right. And I couldn't remember what that stood for.
So that was born out of a relationship that we have with a flutist with the Chelsea Symphony, which is Mira McGrill. And she's heavily involved in another New York-based institution, which has actually only been around for a year. But in that year, they have produced something like 60 performances in 1 year.
That's ridiculous.
And it's incredible. So I knew about them from a musical theater friend of mine who had a workshop of her musical there. And after I attended and posted about it on Instagram, like you do, she contacted me.
If you would like to follow, it's Your Worst Emily. I follow, it's fun. Always good pictures.
So I just randomly posted about it because I was excited for my friend, and then she contacted me and said, "You came to the Musical Theater Factory. My boyfriend is the executive director, heavily involved in the Musical Theater Factory." And then they were planning on doing this huge event, actually, called New Orchestrations, which is their gala benefit happening in November. And it is an orchestration of 4 existing musical theater works and a reorchestration in a bigger context for one piece, which is The Bridges of Madison County, which is a, I think, cult favorite on Broadway.
Yeah, I mean, almost everyone who sees it seems to love it.
Unfortunately missed it, but I heard the buzz and was sad when I didn't get a chance to see it.
And it closed too soon.
Closed too soon.
So Bridges of Madison County, and then 4 others that
4 other works.
TBD.
No, we know the names. You're going to make me try to remember them, aren't you?
Yeah.
Radioactive, The Firebird, Only Anne, and The White City.
Oh no, I made you remember them, and you remember them perfectly.
This is what happens when you have to type things out a lot.
Yeah. That happens to me all the time. I'm like, I know everyone's name at Manus in every division because I'm always just like staring at them, and then they're like, "Oh, you're so and so," and they're like, "Who are you?" Sorry, I work on that desk.
Not a creeper, I swear.
Probably.
No, but these are all really exciting musicals, and over the summer we had the chance to look at things in piano score, and very, very talented.
Did they choose, or did you choose, or was it kind of like you both worked together to choose?
No, since this is their area of expertise, they chose the pieces, and then we had a little bit of input on the structure, and there's going to be an orchestral only piece, and so we let them do what they do, and then we're going to collaborate in terms of the music, and it's going to be really exciting, I think, for us.
Yeah, no, I mean, when the email went out, where asking the core musicians to list the priority of what concerts you wanted to do, and I was like, oh, if there's if that has trombones, definitely top of the list, right. Because I love playing as much non-orchestral stuff as humanly possible, in addition to whatever. But great. Yeah, it's a really cool thing to do. Another. Well, since I just brought it up, the priority listing thing, this is something that hasn't, if I'm not mistaken, there was a long email that went out to all of the core group.
In the interest of shared governance and transparency, we write long emails.
But on the plus side of that, if you read the entire email, you generally don't need to ask questions.
That's the intent, right?
Well, then you run into the problem where people just don't read their emails. But I mean, I read it because I was like, "This is long; it must be important."
If only everybody thought that.
And I had to read it a couple times to make sure I understood exactly what was happening. But now, correct me if I'm wrong. In the interest of bringing in some musicians who haven't played with the orchestra before, there's been kind of a shift in how you're scheduling musicians for each concert. Now, how can you give me like specifics on that, and also why you decided to do this for this season? I mean, if I'm not.
No, this is new.
Sure.
This is new. And there are more concerts this
Yes.
this is a larger season, more
Yes.
concerts.
Right.
Instead of every few months, it's regular. There's one every month.
We have something basically every month.
Except for February, yeah. Well, we have
We'll
the
probably
children's
do a
concert.
children's concert then. So.
Right.
every month.
Something
So
every month,
instead of a one orchestra concert every couple months, it's every month there's something happening with Chelsea.
Yeah.
So
It's a very exciting time for us.
yeah, it's really great. I mean, and right in time for the 10th anniversary season. That's
Right,
Yeah.
celebration.
Well, I think a lot of this is born out of the fact that we have a lot of different types of musicians who play with us, different constituencies, if you will. We have a lot of our musicians who might be fresh out of school, and maybe they're new in the city. And for instance, you mentioned, well, I guess both you, Emily, and Trevor, and they came to New York and wanted to get involved in some sort of orchestral playing here, and they got hooked up with us. So either people who are new to the city or in school or finishing school or trying to get their foot in the door with performing classical music in New York, we offer a great way to get connected that way. As Emily mentioned, we also do have opportunities from time to time to offer our musicians paying work. At the same time, a lot of our musicians who play with us might have jobs in completely different fields, and they'll work in an office from 9 to 5, but at the same time, they're really, really talented musicians, and this is their outlet for that. So we have a certain constituency who might be having your pretty typical freelance musician life and are balancing this gig and that gig, and might not know their availability to do a concert until a week before or 2 weeks before. Whereas we might have other musicians who, because they have work in other fields or what have you, that they can say, okay, well, right now it's September and I can look ahead and I know that I'll have this week free in January and I can commit to that. So essentially what we're trying to do is be able to balance out the needs of those two different constituencies and try to do right by everybody and give people the opportunity to play with us on terms that work for them.
And excuse me, I'm constantly running into people on different gigs who are like, well, how do you get in with Chelsea? I want to play with them, or like, why do you get to do it?
Right.
Why do you get to do it all the time?
Right, sure. And
No,
then,
I mean, it's not quite that, like that, but there's plenty of people that I've run into who just, haven't been in the right place at the right time,
Mm-hmm.
or haven't talked to the right person at the right time, which isn't saying that it's some sort of like rigid, like you can't.
No, not at all.
It's not at all like that, but it's a lot of places are like that,
Right.
and I'm always like, well, they don't. I've been asked
Right.
a couple times to recommend musicians, but I don't have much say in that. It was,
of course, right. And, certain instruments obviously are trickier than others. I mean, if you have a bass trombonist that plays with you regularly, then there are only so many bass trombonists you need, right? But actually one thing that we did last year is that when we launched our new website, soon to be our old new website, but we now have a mechanism for people to go visit us online and send us a resume, and we do look at all of them, And for instance, actually, Mira McGrill, who is one of our flute players now,
She was
with
fantastic.
whom, and she's fantastic, and now she's been kind of our liaison with making this collaboration with the Musical Theatre Factory happen. She got involved with us by sending us her resume through the website.
She also knew somebody who played in the orchestra, so she was aware of it, and that's how she
Right.
knew to,
But in
to
terms
do
of-
that.
But in terms of Matt contacting her to
Yeah.
say, hey, we could use a flute player, can you do it? It was actually just through that.
Yeah.
And as a flute player, I mean, it's not like there are any shortage of them in New York. No offense to flute players, but
Well, it's funny. A lot of times, what the people I end up talking to about are horn players, and which it creates some challenges
Right, sure.
because obviously two of the people who help run it are horn players and
Right.
both play with the group. But it is very. I mean, just in the past year that I've played, there's probably been eight different horn players that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
But in particular, James Perry, who's playing on this
James,
concert, fantastic,
Yeah.
and a cool guy. But this past Monday, we had a quintet rehearsal. We're doing a gig on Sunday, and I mentioned that I had to go to rehearsal Monday night, and he was like, why? I don't know. Like, I mean, I got called in to do one, and I didn't do it, and then it's kind of funny. They haven't called me back again, and then Wednesday I come into rehearsal and he's sitting there. So I'm like, well, that worked out nicely for you, didn't it? But yeah, it's nice to and for me it's cool because that means I get to play with a lot more brass players, which means I can beat them over the head about about my podcast and be like, tell people listen and stuff like that. So this kind of balancing these dual constituencies, like
right,
you
and
said.
well, at the same time, building in opportunities to get new musicians involved with the group as well.
Yeah, that's
So,
never
right.
a bad thing.
Right.
Because each person, because of the organic nature of how it's run, new people obviously can always bring new things.
Sure. And I guess I could just follow up by saying that, well, so I've been with the orchestra since year 2, essentially. And through that time, there are a couple of folks who have been with the orchestra all that time, or even preceding me. But there's been a lot of turnover, which is a healthy thing and I think a normal thing, precisely because we do have certain folks who will play for us for a couple of years as they're kind of getting on their feet as professional musicians, and then they'll go and win a job somewhere, or their careers will take off in really exciting ways, and we filled an important niche for that person at that particular point in the career, and that's great. But at the same time, it's because of who we are and because of the type of work that we do. I think it's that appeal for, well, I think the orchestra will always have a place for people who are hungry to get their feet wet. So.
And one thing that I have spoken to a couple people back, this particular instance is Colin Vanis, who plays bassoon.
Sure.
And regularly, fairly regularly.
No,
plays.
he's doing a solo with us in April.
Right.
Right. And which this will be his second time doing a solo with Chelsea. But I was talking to him about this a few months ago, and he was like, it's nice because even though I mostly can't do the concerts now, but when I can, they're more than willing to have me come and play. It's not so much, I can't, I don't have time for these 3 concert series, so I guess I'm off the list. Even people who only maybe have time to do one a season you'll still see them,
Right, but
on
I
a
think
regular basis.
That's the beauty of the new system, which is to give the people who can be regulars the opportunity to prioritize with their schedule, and then we have room for people who aren't always free, and then we can fit them in when it fits for them.
Yeah, and it's like at Thanksgiving when you see those family members.
It is
you haven't
nice,
seen in a
actually.
while.
I do like
Yeah,
that.
it is it is very much like a family of orchestral musicians who yeah, you might have every once in a while you might have an issue with your stand partner, but you know what? Next month we're gonna see each other again and it'll be great.
Yeah. Oh, I feel all warm and fuzzy now.
Oh, fuzzies. So this will be coming out the Monday preceding the October concert series at the Domena Center. So let's talk a little bit more about that. The specific. Obviously, you're just now starting like the press, like for next month. The press stuff is starting to come out now.
Yes, it is, Mark.
Emily is giving me a look. She keeps me on task.
Family squabbles.
No.
No.
See, this is the thing. I mean, in my my day-to-day life, I'm an academic, and never trust an academic with a deadline for writing something. And Emily comes from the corporate world, so
I'm a project manager.
She's a project manager,
So deadlines are your life.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm very good at it.
Yeah, and no, she's been great. I mean, she keeps the machine well oiled and running. So.
For the most part.
Except when I don't get my stuff in on time.
I always feel like I'm behind, so that's an added level of adrenaline to keep it going.
Well, I was listening to an interview with Lorne Michaels, who's the creator of SNL and runs it and runs his people into the ground. SNL has a legendarily difficult and heavy schedule and strange hours, but in this interview he said that like this fatigue and lack of time breeds genius. So I try to think about that when I'm putting something on.
No, I think it's true. Yeah.
I mean, there's an element to that. Of course, you have to be prepared, but also like that kick you get when you know it's coming very shortly can produce some really great things.
Sure.
So anyway, so the October concert, you mentioned it's an all-American program, and so Rhapsody in Blue.
Right. So the first half of the concert will be new music, or at the very least, newish music. So we'll be performing a piece by our resident composer, Aaron Dye, who has been with the orchestra since the very beginning, I think. Right. So we're very happy to have him write a piece in commemoration of our 10th anniversary. Then we'll be doing the New York premiere of A Journey, which is one of Gerard Schwartz's pieces. So that's the first half of the program. And we're thrilled to be working with Gerard Schwartz again and have him involved. Then the second half will be also American, but with a more sort of jazz flavor. So we'll be doing Artie Shaw's Clarinet Concerto, very fun piece, with Angela Shankar, and Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue with Wei-Yin Chen, who's a young, really exciting Taiwanese-American pianist. So yeah, it should be a really fun program.
And what's the title for this one?
Home.
This was just Home.
Home.
Very nice. Mark Seto.
Thanks, Dan.
Emily Wong.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
So, Angela,
Hello.
thank you for sitting down with me.
My pleasure.
This is the first time I'm putting a mini on top of another episode, so should be fun. So you play clarinet and teach and stuff, all that other stuff.
All that other stuff.
But you're a member of the Chelsea Symphony, and when I talked with Mark and Emily, we talked through like how the whole how you earn your concerto showcase with the orchestra and all that stuff. So you did that. Is this your first time playing with them, playing in front of the orchestra?
So actually my second time.
Okay.
But the first time was sort of a unique experience for me and for the orchestra as well. I played a piece that was premiered by a composer in the orchestra, Seth Bedford.
Seth, of course.
So he wrote a clarinet concerto. And we talked about it. I loved his music from when I started playing with Chelsea and approached him, and we came up with the idea of a concertino, which is sort of a shorter style concerto for clarinet, which was fantastic and fit the orchestra so well because he's been writing for the orchestra for so long.
Right, and he plays viola, and so it's
it's that whole cool organic structure where everything about the group comes kind of out of the group.
Yes.
So then this is your second time. How long have you been playing with the group?
I've been playing, this is my 6th season.
And how did you get involved?
I actually, I played at a music festival like 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, with Mark Seto, one of the co-artistic directors and conductors, and knew then when we worked together, he was just an amazing conductor. And he's only since just grown and blossomed. And when I came to New York, when I found out he was involved with Chelsea, knew I just wanted to be where he was and play under him because I respect him so much as a musician, and I feel very lucky every time he steps on the podium that I get to work with him.
Yeah, and he's just an all-around nice guy in addition to being a good musician.
Yes.
So what, this is six seasons. What keeps you coming back?
I think you already said it. It's that sort of organic bringing together the players, the conductors, the composers. We're all sort of in it together. And it does feel like a family.
Yeah.
And there is something really special about that, which is unique to any other orchestra or ensemble I've worked with in the past. And my performing career has sort of slowly gone away from large orchestral performing, more towards chamber music, and something about playing the orchestral rep with Chelsea is sort of satisfying that need for me in such a fantastic way that I love it. It's great.
Well, and of course, one of the main chamber groups that you play with is two other people who regularly play with Chelsea, your woodwind trio.
Yes.
And they've also gotten different opportunities through the orchestra as well.
Absolutely. And through Matt Aubin, who's our other...
The other co-artistic.
Yes, the other co-artistic, who's also phenomenal and an amazing musician. And our trio has gotten a chance to work with him independently on our chamber music, and that's another cool facet of Chelsea that's really unique, I think.
Didn't you guys go overseas?
We did. We went to Tokyo.
Right.
Thanks to Matt, he championed this project to publish and record the works, the lost, basically, forgotten works of Fernanda Crook, and sought them out, went to France, met her family, and she was a well-known composer in her time, but due to very unfortunate circumstances, her music just sort of vanished. And he brought it back, and we're recording them, and we performed them at the International Double Reed Society Conference in Tokyo over the summer.
You mean there's other female composers besides Clara Schumann and Amy Beach?
Right. Turns out there's one more.
Because according to most music history texts, that's pretty much it. Oh, excuse me, Fanny Mendelssohn as well.
Right, of course.
Well, that's really cool. We're recording this on a Saturday. This upcoming Monday, this will be released, along with the rest of my interview with Mark and Emily. And that day, we also start our rehearsal cycle for this first concert for the orchestra in the Domena Center, all-American concert. Of course, Aaron Dye has written a piece. It's done, obviously, since we're going to start working on it. And doing George Schwartz, and you were playing another concerto with the orchestra. You're doing the Artie Shaw Clarinet Concerto, which is not that frequently played. It's a short little guy.
It's not even a concerto. There's nothing about it that's a concerto other than the title. It's not in concerto form. It's not.
It's more of a concert piece.
It's exactly a concert piece with a fancier classical title, basically. But it's a lot of fun. And it's not performed too often. And I actually didn't even know about it until, a couple of years ago. So, I said that I was interested in doing it. I think I was telling Matt Aubin. And he was like, okay, sure. And I'm like, well, we'll think about it and talk about it. And, that's also kind of the beauty of the orchestra, too. It wasn't a hard no or not really sure we can make this work. It was, okay, we'll see what happens. And then all of a sudden, this program sort of blossomed with Gershwin. And it's just this amazing all-American program. I don't know how much of that had to do with the Shaw being plugged in, but the program itself, I think, is just fantastic. It's going to be a lot of fun.
first half is Die, Aaron's piece, George Schwartz. Second half, Artie Shaw, George Gershwin. It's kind of like two sides of an American. You got your more classically driven, half to start out, and then moving into a more of a jazz one after jazz feel after intermission. And actually, it's gonna be a short concert.
Yeah.
It's like an hour and a half of music. I was very surprised. Usually it's closer to 2.5.
Right, and the Shaw is just so short.
Yeah.
Even in practicing it,
Mhm.
I feel like, it's so long. And then in running through it the other day, wow, it's less than 10 minutes.
This is it.
Yep.
In addition to this performing, what else? What else besides Chelsea? What else do you kind of do as far as your performing and your musical career? I mean, I don't really know you at all. I mean, I sit behind you in orchestra a lot, but that's pretty much it.
And I think did Mozart in the Jungle once.
Yeah,
maybe?
we did.
That was fun.
I did five days on it this year.
Me too.
But even then, most of the time it's
hurry up and wait. Stand here. Don't talk.
And even in like the shooting thing, it's the trombones are sitting behind.
Right.
It's that kind of distance thing.
Yes.
And when we're performing in the St. Paul's, not a lot of space to move around over there to interact. But so what else is makes up Angela Shankar as a musician?
So I am a passionate educator and performer. So on the teaching side of things, I teach at Manus. For the preparatory division, I teach theory classes on Saturdays and Mondays to students, to young students age 4 to about 12.
A lot of them.
A lot of them.
A lot of the theory classes.
Yes, I teach 5 theory classes on Saturday, and then 2 more classes on Monday, and a private lesson, and maybe even more coming up soon. It's wonderful, and I love my students here, and I've been here now 3 years, and watching them grow in that time has been really incredible. And I also teach for the Harmony program. I'm an instructional coach, which means I visit several of the different Harmony sites, which is an after-school music program for kids in underserved areas. And I work with the teachers there and help them establish their classroom, make sure everything's going well, and assist them, basically provide any kind of counseling they need, or a shoulder to cry on, or support, basically any kind of support I can for the teachers, because it's a tough job that they have, which I also did before having a baby. So my life kind of changed around a little bit at that time.
Seems strange.
Right, I would imagine that. And I also teach privately as well. And so that sort of makes up the teaching side of things. And in terms of performance, like I mentioned, I'm part of a trio named Reeds on Me, made of 2 other members of the Chelsea Symphony. And I also play with a quartet called Quartet Kalos, which is made up of 2 Swedish members, a singer and a cellist, and a percussionist from Boston. And that's a real passion project of mine that I really enjoy. And other than that, just general freelance New York scene, play, whatever gigs. But mostly, like I said, it's chamber music, things like that. And then Chelsea Symphony. I do every concert if I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if people, if someone would want to, find your projects, where do they go?
AngelaShankar.com.
Oh, man. How about that? That's super easy. Well, yes. There you go. Angela, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Looking forward to this week.